Screen printing is an art. We get it. No one particular way to do a job. This is just our take on it, with some quick tips to help you elevate techniques while improving efficiency in your shop. All that and add a dash of Business 101, and you've got yourself a series. For anyone out there, press for time.
I'm Damien, welcome back to Press for Time. We're going to talk today about white ink and the different substrates that they work on. I'm always surprised when I go out there. I kind of feel like everybody knew this, but it seems like something that people still struggle with, even guys who have been printing for a lot of years. So for the most part, we print on 3 different substrates: cotton, cotton poly blend, and 100% polyester. Each one of those substrates requires a different type of white ink. The main reason it does is polyester will bleed. It's a different dyeing process than they use for cotton. I won't go too crazy into it, but just so you know, polyester, as you apply heat to it, will gas off some of the dye. What'll happen is if you print a 100% polyester garment with an ink that doesn't have any dye blocking properties, you'll end up getting a print that the dye from underneath will show through the white ink and mess up your print. Sometimes it shows up completely, sometimes it looks like smoke or a little shadow, sometimes it just tints the white and it doesn't look quite right. So what we're going to talk about today is the best ways to kind of handle that in the print process and the best products to use. We carry at dynamicsps.com 3 different great brands of ink, but all brands will have the 3 different main components, which is a cotton white, a low bleed white, or a polyester white. So the first one is cotton white. If you're printing on a cotton garment, typically those dyes are very stable and they won't outgas at all, and so you can just use an ink that has very little dye blocking properties at all. If you're going up to, say, a 50/50, then you're going to want to switch over to a low bleed ink. Now you can see these are the same series, there's just 2 different versions, the cotton version and the low bleed version. That's how most ink companies do it. But it's important because you want to make sure that as you raise up that level of percentage of polyester, you're raising up your dye blocking capabilities. So now if, let's say, we're at an 80/20 and it's a kind of an inexpensive poly garment that you're not super familiar with, I would jump up to a 100% polyester product. That's super poly white or something comparable from the other brands. What this will do is it'll help with the dye blocking and it'll make sure that you don't get that bleed that ruins your print. Now, if we're getting at 100% polyester and it's a cheapy product and we're a little sketchy on whether it's going to bleed or not, the most dye blocking property you can use is something called barrier base. So this is a gray product, so therefore right there it doesn't tint like it will, and you'll need to print white over it to get your base plate. So it's important to make sure that you're getting the right ones. You're going to print these a little bit differently though. So cotton, you can press and kind of dive it into the garment some. It likes to do that and it works well and the print looks nice. So as you add dye blocking capability, typically the inks tend to get stickier and thicker. So what you want to do is back that pressure off. So it's a little harder to do if you're on a manual press, but if you got that accurate arm pressure, then it's something you want to do, because what will happen is if you're trying to press it into the garment, 2 things are going to happen. You're going to limit some of its ability to dye block, because if it sits right on top, it's got a lot of ink to try to get through to get up to the top of the image area so you can see it. And since it is thicker, it'll tend to peak, which will give you that kind of a peaky sandpaper feel that really ruins the hand of the garment. Hand is when you feel a garment and the printed surface of the garment, if you take your hand and rub it across it, how much can you feel it? And if you do press it and get that peaking, it's going to be like rubbing sandpaper. Nobody wants to wear that, trust me. So it's important to know which product to use on which substrate. Garment manufacturers can help you sometimes with this. They can give you some guidance on how bad something bleeds. Certain colors tend to bleed worse. Dark blues, burgundies, things like that tend to bleed worse. But overall, you can talk to your distributor. If you have questions, you can call us here at dynamicsps.com. And just make sure you're using the right product, because the last thing you want to do is send out a bunch of shirts with white ink on them and they come back pink from the red dye migrating up through the garment. Thanks for watching this episode of Press for Time. Now, get back to work.
This episode of Press for Time has been brought to you and powered by Dynamic Screen Printing Supply. and produced by ProQuoter. Remember, it all starts with a quote.
Just superimpose. It was superimposed.
Just to end the video, just
Okay.